History isn't just a record of the past, it's a puzzle filled with secrets, questions, and truths buried on purpose. Welcome to the channel, where we go beyond the surface, challenge the official stories, and uncover the mysteries the world was never supposed to remember. If you love lost civilizations, hidden timelines, ancient technology, and shocking historical evidence, you're exactly where you need to be. Before we begin, make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss a discovery that could change what we think we know about history. And watch till the end, because the final reveal is always what ties the entire mystery together. The truth doesn't show up in the first minute, it shows up in the last one. Now, let's get into the video. Origins, ancient DNA, and the birth of a hidden lineage. The concept of the Anunnaki bloodline is rooted in ancient Mesopotamian texts, particularly Sumerian cuneiform records dating back over 5,000 years. These texts describe a group of beings, the Anunnaki, who descended from the heavens and played a direct role in shaping early human civilization. Beyond myths of divine creation, some researchers suggest that their influence extended to genetic manipulation, creating a lineage of humans partially derived from Anunnaki DNA. This lineage is believed to have persisted through history, influencing royal families, religious leaders, and elite dynasties. Sumerian records and the Anunnaki. Sumerian tablets, particularly the Enuma Elish and the Eridu Genesis, provide the earliest known accounts of Anunnaki activity on Earth. According to these texts, the Anunnaki arrived from a distant planet, sometimes identified in later interpretations as Nibiru. Their primary goal was to extract precious minerals, especially gold, and establish a controlled labor force. To facilitate their operations, they are said to have genetically engineered humans, blending their own DNA with that of early hominids to create a workforce capable of comprehension, manual labor, and reproduction. The term bloodline appears indirectly through descriptions of kings and priests as descendants or chosen humans guided by Anunnaki instruction, capable of understanding divine law and governance. The genetic hypothesis. Modern genetic research has identified unexplained anomalies in human DNA that cannot be fully explained by standard evolutionary theory. Some of these anomalies have led theorists to propose that certain Y chromosome haplogroups carry rare sequences that may be remnants of genetic intervention. Mitochondrial DNA from ancient lineages suggests admixture events not fully attributable to known human migration. Cognitive, physical, or longevity traits sometimes appear in isolated populations, aligning with the idea of selective enhancement. If these hypotheses hold, it would suggest that a subset of humanity carries genetic material directly influenced by Anunnaki intervention, forming a distinct bloodline that could be traced across time and geography. Royal kings and Anunnaki influence. Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian, and Assyrian records suggest that rulers were not simply human, but appointed or descended from those guided by the Anunnaki. Key aspects include divine right of kings. The concept that kings are sanctioned by gods can be traced back to Sumerian rulers described as chosen by the Anunnaki. Long reigns. The Sumerian king list records kings with extraordinarily long lifespans, often tens of thousands of years before the flood, which may symbolize extended longevity imparted by Anunnaki genetic influence. City-states as centers of control. Royal families were positioned in strategic city-states such as Uruk, Eridu, and later Babylon to consolidate control over resources and maintain Anunnaki influence. These patterns persisted throughout history, with many later civilizations adopting similar structures. Pharaohs in Egypt, kings in Mesopotamia, and emperors in China often claim divine or semi-divine ancestry. Global evidence of selective bloodlines. Although Mesopotamia provides the earliest written records, evidence of elite bloodlines appears worldwide. Egyptian pharaohs claim descent from gods, often associated with sky beings. The persistence of ruling dynasties over millennia may reflect controlled genetic lineages. Mesoamerican kings. Aztec and Maya rulers were often described as descending from celestial beings. Sacred genealogies were preserved in codices to legitimize authority. European monarchies. Many royal families trace their ancestry back to figures claiming divine origin or early rulers of city-states. Intermarriage between royal houses could serve as a mechanism to consolidate and preserve genetically distinct traits, potentially reflecting ancient selection strategies. Asian dynasties. Chinese and Japanese imperial families maintained carefully recorded genealogies, sometimes emphasizing divine descent. Historical texts note that select families held knowledge and privileges unavailable to the general populace, a characteristic consistent with the concept of a hidden ruling bloodline. Mechanisms of preservation. Maintaining the Anunnaki bloodline across millennia would have required intentional strategies. Selective marriage and inheritance. Elite lineages often married within a restricted social group to preserve specific traits. Practices such as arranged marriages, dynastic unions, and religious sanctioning of unions reinforce genetic continuity. Religious and cultural authority. Priests and kings often acted as guardians of both knowledge and lineage. Rituals, laws, and social hierarchies ensured that knowledge of origins remained within a select group. Hidden knowledge and education. Temples, academies, and secret societies preserved records, teaching astrology, astronomy, metallurgy, and governance. Literacy and knowledge were restricted, maintaining a controlled class of informed individuals likely connected to bloodline preservation. Evidence in ancient DNA studies. Modern studies of ancient DNA have revealed patterns that may be consistent with a preserved elite lineage. DNA extracted from burial sites of Sumerian, Egyptian, and European elites shows distinct haplotypes less common in general populations. These lineages sometimes exhibit traits associated with cognitive advantage, longevity, or resistance to disease. Some studies suggest admixture events not recorded in human migratory history, potentially aligning with the idea of intervention or hybridization. While mainstream science interprets these results as normal variation or unknown migratory influence, alternative researchers suggest a connection to the original Anunnaki genetic interventions described in Sumerian records. Myth, symbolism, and bloodline legacy. The notion of a bloodline is often encoded in myth. Gods descending from the heavens to create humans or bestow gifts represents intervention at a genetic or cultural level. Long-lived kings and demigods symbolize enhanced human capabilities, potentially derived from hybridization. Sacred genealogies in temples, texts, and royal records may serve as both historical documentation and a coded method of lineage preservation. These narratives provide a framework to interpret historical claims of divine descent not as literal mythology, but as a record of a controlled genetic lineage maintained over thousands of years. The concept of hidden rulers. A central aspect of the Anunnaki bloodline theory is the idea that true power has always been exercised by those connected to this lineage, often operating behind the scenes. Influence over governance. Historical rulers may have acted as intermediaries or administrators for hidden powers, implementing policies aligned with the bloodline's interests. Preservation of knowledge. Secret knowledge, including astrology, sacred geometry, metallurgy, and medicine, was guarded by select families or priesthoods, ensuring continuity across generations. Social manipulation and control. By controlling succession, religious authority, and education, the bloodline could maintain influence over broader populations while remaining largely invisible. Implications for modern humanity. If the Anunnaki bloodline persists today, certain individuals or families may possess ancestral knowledge, genetic traits, or predispositions linked to this ancient intervention. Power structures in politics, finance, religion, and academia may reflect continuity from ancient lineages. Continuity of the bloodline, ancient civilizations, and genetic evidence. The persistence of the Anunnaki bloodline across time is suggested by the continuity of elite dynasties, the strategic placement of rulers, and archaeological and genetic evidence spanning multiple civilizations. In Part 2, the focus is on how the Anunnaki bloodline manifested in ancient societies, evidence from key archaeological sites, and the patterns indicating a deliberate transmission of genetic material across generations and regions. Mesopotamia, the cradle of bloodlines. Mesopotamia, particularly Sumer, Akkad, and Babylon, provides the earliest and most detailed records of the Anunnaki bloodline. The Sumerian king list. The Sumerian king list records extraordinarily long reigns for early rulers, some stretching tens of thousands of years. While likely symbolic, these reigns may encode the perception of enhanced longevity or specialized status. Certain kings were described as directly appointed by the Anunnaki, reinforcing the notion of a select genetic lineage with divine sanction. The king list documents successive dynasties, emphasizing continuity even through catastrophic events such as floods. City-state control. Strategic placement of rulers in Ur, Uruk, Lagash, and Eridu ensured oversight of resources, agriculture, and labor forces. Priests and administrators from these cities often intermarried, preserving knowledge, influence, and potentially genetic traits. Artifacts, inscriptions, and architectural alignment with celestial phenomena further support the theory of guided leadership with cosmic awareness, a hallmark of bloodline continuity. Cuneiform records of genetic intervention. Tablets suggest early Anunnaki involvement in shaping humans to create a workforce capable of sophisticated tasks. Descriptions of half-divine humans or individuals of special stature may correspond to genetic or phenotypic distinctions maintained through selective reproduction. Egyptian dynasties and the preservation of bloodlines. Egypt represents a crucial node in the transmission of elite lineages, with many dynasties emphasizing divine descent. Pharaohs and divine right. Pharaohs were considered descendants of sky beings or gods, a belief central to legitimacy. Hieroglyphic texts frequently reference ancestors who came from the stars, suggesting continuity of the Anunnaki bloodline. Selective marriage practices. Egyptian dynasties often practice sibling or close relative marriage to preserve bloodlines, ensuring the concentration of traits believed to be sacred or divinely inherited. Genealogical evidence in royal tombs indicates deliberate lineage tracking, consistent with strategies outlined in Mesopotamian records. Temple guardianship. Temples were centers of both religious and genetic oversight. Priests maintained astronomical records, sacred rituals, and knowledge of bloodlines, preserving continuity across generations. Mesoamerican civilizations and celestial lineage. In the Americas, the Maya, Aztec, and Olmec civilizations also reflect evidence of celestial lineage claims and elite bloodlines. Maya kings and the star connection. Maya rulers were considered descendants of gods, often linked to the sky. Codices and stelae record astronomical observations and genealogies, preserving ancestral knowledge alongside ruling authority. Bloodline continuity was maintained through royal marriage networks and ritual selection of successors. Aztec nobility. Aztec nobles claimed descent from celestial beings, reinforcing the legitimacy of the ruling bloodline. The transmission of sacred knowledge, military training, and religious responsibility suggests a controlled lineage intended to preserve traits associated with divine favor. Olmec and early Mesoamerican sites. Monumental heads and statues suggest a long-standing tradition of portraying elites with distinctive features. Some researchers suggest these traits may represent physical markers of a preserved bloodline, echoing practices observed in Eurasian civilizations. Ancient DNA studies and lineage markers. Advances in genetic research have allowed for the examination of ancient remains associated with elites, rulers, and high-status individuals. Distinct haplogroups. DNA studies of Mesopotamian, Egyptian, and European elites show haplogroups uncommon in general populations, suggesting a preserved genetic lineage. Haplogroup markers linked to cognitive ability, immunity, and longevity may reflect selective breeding strategies. Mitochondrial and Y chromosome patterns. Mitochondrial DNA indicates matrilineal continuity, while Y chromosome analysis traces patrilineal inheritance. Evidence of isolated lineages and restricted admixture supports the hypothesis of elite genetic isolation, consistent with ancient preservation practices. Hybridization theories. Some genetic anomalies observed in ancient populations, including unusual insertions or alleles, could indicate intervention from an external source. These findings align with Sumerian claims of the Anunnaki altering human genetics to create a distinct group of enhanced humans. Spread of bloodline influence. The Anunnaki bloodline, if persistent, appears to have spread globally. Europe. Royal dynasties in Europe often claim divine ancestry. Intermarriage between royal families across nations may have preserved genetic markers and consolidated power. Secret societies sometimes trace origins to ancient Mesopotamia or Egypt, potentially maintaining knowledge of the bloodline. Asia. Chinese imperial dynasties emphasized divine or semi-divine ancestry, with elaborate genealogical records. Knowledge, rituals, and authority were tightly controlled, possibly reflecting bloodline maintenance similar to Middle Eastern practices. Africa. Nubian and Ethiopian dynasties claimed descent from celestial or divine figures. Preservation of elite lineages through marriage, ritual, and governance aligns with global patterns observed in Mesopotamia and Egypt. Mechanisms of bloodline preservation across civilizations. Consistency across civilizations suggests deliberate strategies. Selective reproduction. Restricted marriage among elites preserved desired traits and knowledge. Lineages maintained influence through inheritance, religious sanction, and political power. Knowledge as power. Astronomical knowledge, astrology, sacred rituals, and advanced technologies were often restricted to bloodline elites. Education and literacy were tools to maintain influence and continuity. Symbolic reinforcement. Myths of gods descending from the heavens, semi-divine kings, and sacred rulers encoded the concept of bloodline supremacy, legitimizing dynastic control. Monuments, art, and religious practices acted as cultural markers of continuity, reinforcing the lineage authority. Evidence of bloodline traits. Across archaeological sites, evidence suggests the physical and cognitive traits of this bloodline were preserved intentionally. Elite burials frequently contain artifacts indicating advanced skills or knowledge. Skeletal remains show distinct cranial shapes, stature, or longevity indicators. Artistic depictions often highlight unique features or symbols representing authority, wisdom, or divine connection. These traits suggest that bloodline members were distinct, recognized, and selectively maintained throughout ancient history. Implications for global civilization. The continuity of the Anunnaki bloodline has profound implications. Political influence. Lineages may have subtly guided the development of empires, laws, and governance. Authority may have remained concentrated within bloodline networks across continents. Technological and cultural advancement. Knowledge preservation allowed certain societies to advance faster than surrounding populations. Astronomy, metallurgy, architecture, and agriculture were often protected as elite secrets, ensuring bloodline supremacy. Religious and social hierarchies. Bloodline preservation intertwined with religion, myth, and ritual reinforced legitimacy and obedience. Global patterns suggest a coordinated effort, conscious or instinctual, to maintain lineage influence across time. Archaeological discoveries, notable dynasties, and tracing the bloodline. Specific archaeological discoveries, notable dynasties, and evidence that may reveal the persistence of the Anunnaki bloodline across ancient civilizations. By examining remains, artifacts, and historical records, a pattern emerges that suggests a carefully maintained lineage influencing human development, governance, and cultural evolution. Archaeological evidence of elite lineages. Mesopotamian burial sites. Excavations in Ur, Uruk, and Nippur have revealed burial chambers containing the remains of high-status individuals accompanied by elaborate grave goods. Characteristics suggesting bloodline preservation include physical traits. Skeletal analysis shows individuals with taller stature and pronounced cranial features compared to general population remains. Artifacts, items such as inscribed stelae, ritual objects, and jewelry indicate access to advanced knowledge, ceremonial authority, and wealth. Selective placement. Elite tombs are often in proximity to temples or ziggurats, suggesting integration of religious and political power with bloodline continuity. Egyptian royal tombs. Studies of pharaonic tombs in the Valley of the Kings and pyramids at Giza provide evidence of deliberate lineage preservation. Mummification and preservation techniques. Only elite mummies underwent elaborate preservation processes, ensuring continuity of ancestry recognition. Genetic markers. Preliminary DNA studies of pharaohs indicate unique haplogroups not widely distributed in the general Egyptian population. Artifacts, items such as inscribed amulets and sacred symbols suggest a preserved ancestral connection to divine or celestial authority, consistent with Anunnaki lineage influence. European megalithic sites. Sites such as Stonehenge, Newgrange, and the megalithic tombs of Iberia show evidence of elite burials with astronomical orientation. Placement of remains in alignment with solstices, equinoxes, or lunar cycles may indicate elite knowledge of celestial phenomena, potentially inherited along bloodlines. Some remains exhibit distinct cranial shapes or anomalies, suggesting selective breeding or isolated genetic traits. Artifacts such as engraved stones and ritual items imply that certain families maintained sacred authority and technological knowledge over centuries. Notable bloodline dynasties. Sumerian and Akkadian rulers. Dynastic rulers, such as those of Ur and Akkad, claimed divine appointment by the Anunnaki. Genealogical continuity was preserved through intermarriage, ritual instruction, and temple-based governance. These dynasties established patterns of centralized control and elite preservation that influenced successive civilizations. Egyptian pharaohs. From the First Dynasty onward, Egyptian rulers emphasized divine descent, legitimizing rule and maintaining exclusive knowledge. Pharaohs such as Khufu, Djoser, and Ramses II consolidated power while preserving elite lineage, often marrying within families to protect genetic and ceremonial continuity. The intertwining of governance, religious authority, and genetic heritage illustrates the integration of Anunnaki principles into human civilization. Mesoamerican nobility. Mayan and Aztec rulers emphasized divine lineage, with succession often restricted to selected families. Codices, stelae, and ritual records demonstrate careful documentation of ancestry, suggesting a controlled transmission of elite knowledge and traits. Nobility practiced selective reproduction, ensuring continuity of the bloodline and reinforcement of authority. European royal dynasties. Medieval and early modern royal families maintained intermarriage practices to preserve hereditary traits. European nobility often traced claims of divine or celestial origin, mirroring ancient practices in Mesopotamia and Egypt. These practices suggest a conscious or inherited legacy of Anunnaki lineage principles, maintaining influence across generations. Evidence from ancient DNA. Modern genetics provides additional support for the persistence of elite bloodlines. Haplogroup concentration. Certain Y chromosome and mitochondrial DNA haplogroups are disproportionately present among royal and elite populations. These lineages are rare in general populations, implying restricted genetic inheritance over centuries. Genetic anomalies. DNA extracted from elite burials occasionally shows traits associated with enhanced cognition, longevity, and resilience, consistent with selective enhancement described in Sumerian texts. Admixture events in ancient populations sometimes occur without apparent migratory explanation, suggesting intervention or isolation to maintain bloodline integrity. Continuity across civilizations. Comparison of DNA from Mesopotamian, Egyptian, and European elites indicates patterns of genetic preservation, consistent with the deliberate maintenance of traits over millennia. These patterns support the notion that elite families functioned as carriers of a preserved genetic and cultural legacy, potentially originating from Anunnaki guidance. Cultural and religious mechanisms of bloodline preservation. Mythology and divine descent. Myths of gods creating humans or bestowing gifts reflect a symbolic encoding of genetic and cultural inheritance. Stories of demigods, semi-divine rulers, and chosen families serve to legitimize authority and reinforce lineage continuity. Temple and priesthood control. Religious institutions often functioned as guardians of knowledge and lineage, preserving astronomical, ritual, and genealogical records. Only select families or initiates were permitted access, reinforcing elite exclusivity and continuity. Rituals and initiations. Initiatory practices serve to transmit knowledge and reinforce genetic selection, ensuring only those prepared to uphold the bloodline's legacy could inherit authority. Rituals sometimes included observation of celestial events, aligning temporal and genealogical cycles with cosmic principles. Patterns of bloodline influence. Global spread. Patterns of elite control, selective reproduction, and religious authority appear independently in multiple civilizations, including Mesopotamia, Egypt, Mesoamerica, and Europe. These repeated patterns suggest a shared principle or origin, consistent with the concept of an enduring Anunnaki bloodline. Control of knowledge and technology. Elite families consistently maintained knowledge of astronomy, metallurgy, mathematics, and governance, enabling technological and cultural advantage over general populations. Knowledge preservation was closely linked to lineage, ensuring continuity of influence. Political and social dominance. Bloodline families frequently controlled succession, governance, and religious authority, shaping social hierarchies and resource distribution. The influence of these families persists into modern times, visible in institutions, dynasties, and elite networks. Integration with human evolution. Hybridization and genetic legacy. Sumerian texts describe early human modification to create a labor-capable hybrid population, with select lineages receiving additional traits. Archaeological and genetic evidence suggests isolated populations and elite families may carry markers of this early intervention. Cognitive and behavioral traits. Certain lineages exhibit traits associated with leadership, intelligence, or resilience, potentially reflecting ancestral selection aligned with Anunnaki intervention. These traits may have contributed to the success and longevity of dynasties across millennia. Societal continuity. Preservation of elite knowledge and selective inheritance ensured that cultural and technological continuity was maintained, linking ancient civilizations to modern power structures. Implications for modern bloodlines. The evidence from Part 3 suggests that elite families today may descend directly from lineages influenced by the Anunnaki, carrying both genetic and cultural markers. Authority, knowledge, and social influence could persist through these bloodlines, explaining patterns of global leadership, dynastic power, and institutional control. Understanding the historical continuity of these bloodlines provides insight into the hidden structures of power, influence, and governance that have shaped human civilization. Secret societies, esoteric knowledge, and the hidden rulers. How this lineage was preserved and transmitted through secret societies, esoteric knowledge, and hidden networks, particularly during periods of societal transition, conquest, and upheaval. Evidence suggests that the Anunnaki bloodline did not merely persist in royal families but was actively maintained and guided through covert channels across continents and millennia. The emergence of secret societies. Mesopotamian origins. Temples and priesthoods in Sumer and Akkad functioned as centers of elite knowledge, controlling writing, astronomy, mathematics, and religious rituals. Access to this knowledge was highly restricted, often limited to descendants of bloodline families or trained initiates. Priestly elites were responsible for recording genealogy and celestial events, ensuring the preservation of bloodline legitimacy and continuity. Egyptian esoteric schools. Egyptian priesthoods, particularly in cities such as Thebes and Heliopolis, controlled sacred knowledge including astronomy, medicine, and ritual. Initiates were selected from elite families, often connected to the pharaonic lineage, suggesting a deliberate continuation of Anunnaki-aligned traits. Hieroglyphic texts and temple inscriptions encoded both cultural knowledge and lineage information, allowing the bloodline to maintain continuity even during political transitions. Greco-Roman influence. Mystery schools such as the Eleusinian Mysteries in Greece preserved esoteric knowledge related to cosmology, ethics, and governance. Roman priesthoods, including the Vestal Virgins and Augurs, maintained elite knowledge and social authority, often intertwined with aristocratic families. These institutions may have acted as conduits for the preservation of ancient bloodline influence, linking Mediterranean elites to older Near Eastern traditions. Medieval and Renaissance networks. European nobility and guilds. During the Middle Ages, European nobility maintained genealogical records to legitimize claims to power. Guilds and craft societies often restricted technical knowledge to family lines or initiates, preserving specialized skills and social influence. Secret networks ensured that elite families could maintain influence even amidst societal upheaval, protecting the continuity of bloodline traits. Esoteric orders and mystical societies. Orders such as the Knights Templar, Rosicrucians, and later Freemasonry claimed access to ancient wisdom and sacred knowledge. Historical analysis suggests that these societies preserved rituals, symbolism, and lineage awareness, acting as custodians of the bloodline. Membership was selective, often requiring proof of noble ancestry, alignment with certain ethical codes, or esoteric aptitude, ensuring continuity of the elite network. Church and religious lineages. Ecclesiastical hierarchies often favored families with historical or genetic connections to power. Religious rituals, initiation, and education were tools to preserve knowledge within bloodline elites, subtly maintaining influence over secular and spiritual matters. Mechanisms of bloodline preservation through esoteric knowledge. Restricted access to knowledge. Across civilizations, literacy, numeracy, and advanced technical knowledge were often restricted to select families or priesthoods. Knowledge of astronomy, geometry, and governance was preserved through oral traditions, coded manuscripts, and temple inscriptions. This ensured that bloodline members retained cultural, technological, and ritual advantage, consolidating authority across generations. Symbolism and encoding. Sacred texts, temple architecture, and artistic depictions often encoded genealogical information and cosmic principles. Symbols of serpents, lions, eagles, and celestial bodies frequently denote divine or semi-divine lineage, guiding future generations to recognize bloodline continuity. Secret societies maintained understanding of these symbols, linking past and present knowledge. Selective initiation and education. Initiation rituals and education programs screened for individuals capable of maintaining the lineage traditions and influence. Those accepted into elite orders were taught astronomical, mathematical, and political knowledge, ensuring that the bloodline retained both cognitive and social dominance. The role of hidden rulers. Medieval Europe. Monarchs often relied on advisory councils, nobles, and clergy connected to ancient bloodlines. Elite networks influenced succession, legal codes, and diplomacy, often operating behind the visible hierarchy. These hidden rulers functioned as custodians of tradition and maintainers of selective genetic continuity. Asian dynasties. Chinese and Japanese imperial families maintained records of celestial alignment, genealogical continuity, and ritual knowledge. Court scholars and secret councils preserved ancient knowledge, sometimes derived from contact with Mesopotamian or Central Asian lineages, ensuring dynastic and cultural stability. Middle Eastern and African elites. Caliphs, pharaoh-descendant families, and Nubian elites acted as intermediaries of ancient knowledge, preserving ritual, political, and genealogical continuity. These elites often maintained influence through both public authority and hidden networks, a strategy consistent with the persistence of the Anunnaki bloodline. Esoteric knowledge and bloodline traits. Cognitive and leadership traits. Secret knowledge, rituals, and education systems reinforced innate traits linked to the bloodline, including strategic thinking, memory, and social influence. Members of the lineage often excelled in leadership, governance, and administration due to structured learning aligned with genetic predispositions. Cultural and religious authority. Custodians of the bloodline maintained influence over cultural narratives, religious doctrine, and social norms. Knowledge of celestial cycles, sacred geometry, and ritual timing allowed elites to predict and influence societal events, strengthening their dominance. Integration of ancient and modern knowledge. Bloodline networks evolved to incorporate contemporary scientific and technological developments while preserving core ancestral knowledge. This integration ensured the continued relevance and power of lineage elites across changing historical periods. Case studies: bloodline continuity in practice. The Medici family of Renaissance Italy. Prominent bankers and political leaders, the Medicis preserved knowledge, influence, and genetic continuity through selective marriages and patronage of arts and sciences. Their network illustrates the continued presence of elite knowledge transfer and societal control, reminiscent of ancient bloodline strategies. European royal houses. Dynasties such as the Habsburgs, Bourbons, and Romanovs maintained intricate genealogical records. Intermarriage between royal families across nations preserved both genetic traits and political alliances, echoing ancient Anunnaki-inspired lineage strategies. Middle Eastern and Asian dynasties. Islamic caliphs, Persian shahs, and Chinese emperors maintained selective access to knowledge and hereditary power. Scholars and court officials ensured the continuity of both intellectual and genetic elite traits, demonstrating global persistence of bloodline principles. Implications of hidden bloodline networks. Control of knowledge and power. Hidden rulers and secret societies enabled elite families to guide societal development while remaining largely invisible. Access to both historical and contemporary knowledge allowed the bloodline to influence politics, economics, religion, and culture. Cultural and genetic continuity. Bloodline networks ensured that desired traits, both genetic and cognitive, were preserved across generations. This continuity explains historical patterns of long-lasting dynasties and elite influence, even amid societal upheaval. Modern legacy. Contemporary institutions, financial networks, and political elites may trace indirect lineage to these ancient bloodline networks. Secret societies, educational institutions, and cultural organizations continue to reinforce elite influence, preserving continuity from ancient Anunnaki-aligned families. Modern implications, genetic traces, and elite influence. While the first four parts of this documentary traced the Anunnaki bloodline from ancient Mesopotamia through dynasties, secret societies, and hidden rulers, Part 5 examines how this lineage may continue into the modern era, the genetic traces observable in contemporary populations, and the influence of bloodline elites in shaping global events from the Industrial Revolution to today. Tracing the bloodline in contemporary populations. Genetic markers and elite lineages. Modern genetics allows researchers to examine haplogroups, mitochondrial DNA, and Y chromosome markers associated with ancient elite lineages. Certain families in Europe, the Middle East, and Asia exhibit unusual genetic continuity, suggesting they descend from lineages historically aligned with elite authority. These genetic markers are rare among the general population, aligning with historical patterns of restricted intermarriage and selective reproduction. Longevity and cognitive traits. Studies of historic and contemporary elites suggest that certain families display longevity, cognitive ability, and leadership traits more consistently than the general population. Anthropologists and geneticists have hypothesized that these traits may result from long-term selective preservation of advantageous alleles, possibly tracing back to ancient intervention. Global distribution. Genetic lineages historically concentrated in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Europe have dispersed globally due to migration, colonization, and intermarriage. Modern elite networks may maintain traces of Anunnaki-aligned lineage while integrating into broader populations, preserving influence subtly but persistently. Elite influence on global history. Industrial revolution and technological control. Families with historical elite ancestry played crucial roles in financing, organizing, and directing industrial expansion. Access to capital, knowledge, and strategic influence allowed these families to shape global economic and technological development. Patterns of controlled education, mentorship, and inheritance mirror ancient practices of preserving bloodline knowledge and authority. Political power and governance. Modern dynasties, political families, and institutional elites often trace ancestry to historical ruling classes. Their influence extends through legislative, judicial, and executive systems, reflecting the long-standing continuity of strategic control established by ancestral networks. Elite decision-making frequently aligns with historical patterns of maintaining wealth, authority, and social influence within select families. Cultural and religious leadership. Religious and spiritual institutions continue to reinforce lineage-based authority, often indirectly shaping public perception and societal norms. Bloodline members may occupy high-ranking positions, ensuring preservation of values, knowledge, and social influence, consistent with ancestral strategies. Mechanisms of modern bloodline preservation. Education and mentorship. Access to elite educational institutions, mentorship networks, and specialized training continues to function as a modern tool for preserving knowledge and authority. Lineage members benefit from selective exposure to leadership skills, strategy, and governance, echoing ancient training practices. Financial networks. Wealth concentration and control over banking, investment, and industrial networks enable the continuation of influence across generations. Historical patterns of consolidation and inheritance replicate ancient strategies of elite preservation, ensuring the survival of lineage power. Marriage and alliance practices. Modern elites continue to form alliances through marriage, business partnerships, and political collaboration. These alliances preserve both genetic traits and social influence, reflecting millennia-old strategies originating with the Anunnaki-aligned dynasties. Genetic evidence in modern populations. Haplogroup continuity. Studies have revealed haplogroups in European, Middle Eastern, and Asian populations consistent with historically elite lineages. These lineages often cluster within families historically involved in governance, priesthoods, or aristocratic positions. Genetic traits and phenotypes. Certain families display phenotypic traits historically associated with elite populations, including heightened cognitive function, resilience, and longevity. These traits may correspond to the selective preservation described in Sumerian and Egyptian texts, implying long-term lineage continuity. Isolated genetic communities. Some remote or historically insular populations maintain distinct genetic markers aligning with elite ancestry. These communities often exhibit concentrated knowledge, social structure, and specialized skills, supporting the hypothesis that bloodline traits were preserved intentionally. Influence of bloodline networks on modern society. Politics and governance. Elite families continue to exert disproportionate influence in national and international governance. Historical dynastic knowledge and strategic alliances allow these families to shape legislation, diplomacy, and global policy, often while remaining largely invisible to the public eye. Economics and industry. Banking dynasties, industrial families, and major investors maintain concentrated influence over global markets and technological development. These modern systems of control mirror historical strategies used to preserve elite power and ensure generational continuity. Education and research. Institutions founded or controlled by elite families perpetuate access to knowledge and expertise. Elite networks influence curricula, research priorities, and scientific advancement, ensuring cultural and intellectual continuity. Media and cultural influence. Control over media, publishing, and cultural institutions enables elite families to shape societal narratives, reinforcing values and social hierarchies consistent with bloodline objectives. This influence ensures that the knowledge, traits, and authority of elite lineages persist in modern culture. The connection between ancient DNA and modern power. Continuity of traits. Genetic studies suggest a continuity of traits associated with historical elite populations, such as cognitive aptitude, leadership ability, and longevity. These traits likely contributed to the success of families historically aligned with the Anunnaki bloodline. Transmission across generations. Intermarriage, mentorship, and selective alliances ensured the persistence of both genetic and cultural characteristics, maintaining the integrity of the bloodline. Modern elites continue this tradition, subtly reinforcing historical patterns of influence. Integration of knowledge and power. Historical and contemporary elites integrate knowledge, resources, and influence to maintain social dominance. This integration mirrors ancient strategies used to ensure that bloodline members remain key decision-makers in political, economic, and cultural arenas. Implications for understanding modern history. Hidden networks of influence. Recognizing the potential continuity of the Anunnaki bloodline sheds light on persistent patterns of elite control. Historical events, power shifts, and technological advancements may reflect the strategic influence of bloodline networks across centuries. Elite persistence across upheavals. Wars, revolutions, and societal changes often resulted in apparent disruption, yet elite bloodlines often adapted and persisted, maintaining influence over emerging structures. This resilience aligns with historical practices of hidden lineage preservation. Global strategy and cohesion. Bloodline networks operate across nations, cultures, and institutions, reflecting a long-term strategy for maintaining control. Coordination and adaptability allowed elite families to continue shaping global society while preserving their genetic and cultural legacy. Bloodline influence on historical events and societal transformations. The persistence of the bloodline, combined with control over knowledge, wealth, and governance, has allowed these families to subtly guide human history over millennia. Influence on early empires. Mesopotamian consolidation. Early empires, including Akkad and Babylon, were formed under kings who claimed divine or semi-divine ancestry. Strategic alliances, intermarriage among elite families, and control over military, agriculture, and trade allowed these rulers to maintain continuity of Anunnaki-aligned influence. Monumental architecture, administrative records, and religious structures encoded both political authority and knowledge of elite lineage, ensuring long-term societal control. Egyptian empire building. Pharaohs consolidated control through centralized bureaucracy, religious authority, and territorial expansion. Dynastic continuity was preserved by careful succession planning, marriage alliances, and selective education of heirs. Egyptian elites maintained astronomical and mathematical knowledge, reinforcing both political and cultural dominance, consistent with Anunnaki bloodline practices. Classical civilization. Greek city-states, Roman republics, and later empires maintained elite families with access to specialized knowledge, social authority, and political leverage. Societal stability often depended on hidden networks of influence, echoing the strategies of ancient bloodline preservation. Bloodline influence in revolutions. Medieval and early modern Europe. During periods of upheaval, including the fall of feudal kingdoms, the Renaissance, and religious wars, bloodline families often retained influence through hidden networks, marriage alliances, and financial leverage. These families acted as stabilizers, ensuring continuity of elite knowledge, social hierarchy, and wealth, even amidst chaos. Industrial Revolution. Elite families facilitated industrialization by controlling investment, intellectual property, and technological knowledge. Access to resources and education allowed them to guide societal transformation, ensuring that innovation aligned with their long-term interests. Patterns of influence mirrored ancient strategies of centralized control, selective knowledge dissemination, and dynastic continuity. Political revolutions. Revolutions such as the French and American revolutions disrupted visible hierarchies, yet hidden elites retained influence through financial networks, political appointments, and strategic alliances. Historical records suggest that bloodline families often adapted to changing circumstances, ensuring their continued relevance and authority. Control of knowledge and ideology. Education and literacy. Literacy and access to higher learning historically concentrated among elite families, ensuring control over cultural narratives and societal norms. Education served as both a tool for social stratification and a method to preserve ancestral knowledge and bloodline continuity. Religion and philosophy. Religious institutions were key instruments for preserving elite authority, legitimizing rule, and reinforcing ancestral claims of divine lineage. Philosophical movements, including those influencing governance and law, were often guided by individuals connected to elite or priestly bloodlines. Art, architecture, and symbolism. Cultural artifacts, monuments, and artistic symbolism frequently encoded lineage knowledge, elite ideology, and celestial alignment, ensuring that succeeding generations recognized and respected the bloodline's authority. Global spread of bloodline influence. Europe and Asia. European royal houses, Asian dynasties, and Middle Eastern caliphates maintained genealogical continuity and elite networks. Intermarriage and diplomacy preserved both genetic traits and knowledge transfer, ensuring the longevity of influence across continents. Colonial expansion. Bloodline elites played significant roles in exploration, colonization, and global trade. Control over resources, navigation, and political structures allowed these families to extend their influence worldwide, shaping economies, societies, and governance far from their original centers. Cultural integration. The diffusion of language, religion, and legal systems often reflected bloodline-aligned strategic planning, preserving influence while integrating local populations. Education, social stratification, and elite institutions ensured continuity of leadership and knowledge, consistent with long-standing lineage practices. Mechanisms of continuity during crisis. Adaptation to political change. Hidden elites adapted to regime changes, wars, and social upheaval by strategically positioning family members in emerging power structures. Examples include integration into bureaucracies, military leadership, and financial institutions, ensuring persistence of influence despite public disruption. Preservation of genetic traits. Selective marriage and alliance practices continued to concentrate desired genetic traits within elite families. Traits such as cognitive aptitude, leadership capability, and social awareness were maintained, reinforcing both biological and cultural continuity. Maintenance of knowledge. Libraries, secret societies, and educational institutions preserved both scientific and spiritual knowledge. This continuity ensured that bloodline families could influence policy, culture, and innovation across generations. The Industrial and Modern Era. Industrial families and corporations. Families with ancestral elite ties established corporations, banks, and industrial ventures that became foundations for modern global economies. These families strategically used financial networks, patents, and trade routes to consolidate influence and maintain legacy control. Political influence in the 19th and 20th centuries. Bloodline elites influenced colonial policies, nation-building, and early international diplomacy. Dynastic connections allowed control over political alliances, shaping treaties, laws, and governance structures worldwide. Scientific and cultural advancements. Select families funded universities, research institutions, and cultural projects. These actions reinforced both intellectual authority and societal leadership, consistent with historical bloodline strategies. Bloodline influence in contemporary society. Global governance. Elite families continue to influence international institutions, financial systems, and policymaking bodies. Historical knowledge, networks, and education provide strategic advantage that traces back to ancient lineage practices. Wealth and financial systems. Control over banking, investment, and industrial empires allows bloodline families to shape global economies. Mechanisms of inheritance, alliance, and mentorship ensure continuity of influence and resource concentration. Media and information control. Families historically aligned with the bloodline often maintain influence in media, publishing, and communication platforms. Control over information allows them to shape cultural narratives, public perception, and societal priorities, reflecting strategies similar to ancient Anunnaki-aligned elites. The Industrial and Modern Era. Industrial families and corporations. Families with ancestral elite ties established corporations, banks, and industrial ventures that became foundations for modern global economies. These families strategically used financial networks, patents, and trade routes to consolidate influence and maintain legacy control. Political influence in the 19th and 20th centuries. Bloodline elites influenced colonial policies, nation-building, and early international diplomacy. Dynastic connections allowed control over political alliances, shaping treaties, laws, and governance structures worldwide. Scientific and cultural advancements. Select families funded universities, research institutions, and cultural projects. These actions reinforced both intellectual authority and societal leadership, consistent with historical bloodline strategies. Bloodline influence in contemporary society. Global governance. Elite families continue to influence international institutions, financial systems, and policymaking bodies. Historical knowledge, networks, and education provide strategic advantage that traces back to ancient lineage practices. Wealth and financial systems. Control over banking, investment, and industrial empires allows bloodline families to shape global economies. Mechanisms of inheritance, alliance, and mentorship ensure continuity of influence and resource concentration. Media and information control. Families historically aligned with the bloodline often maintain influence in media, publishing, and communication platforms. Control over information allows them to shape cultural narratives, public perception, and societal priorities, reflecting strategies similar to ancient Anunnaki-aligned elites. Genetic traits, leadership, and modern elite networks. While the previous sections traced the Anunnaki bloodline from ancient civilizations to hidden influence in the modern era, Part 7 examines how specific genetic traits, intellectual capabilities, and leadership characteristics associated with this lineage manifest in contemporary elites. This analysis also explores the structures through which these traits are preserved and utilized to maintain societal influence. Elite genetic traits and ancestral selection. Cognitive and leadership attributes. Genetic studies suggest certain families retain traits associated with strategic thinking, long-term planning, problem-solving, and social intelligence. Historical accounts describe rulers and elites with remarkable foresight, administrative skill, and decisiveness, consistent with selective preservation of cognitive traits. These traits may have been intentionally maintained through restricted mating patterns, mentorship, and elite education. Physical and health advantages. Elite families historically enjoyed better access to nutrition, healthcare, and protection, leading to enhanced physical resilience and longevity. Skeletal analysis from ancient burials indicates above-average stature and bone density among elites, traits occasionally seen in modern descendants. Genetic advantages may have included resistance to disease, improved metabolism, and recovery capacity, contributing to long-term leadership stability. Personality and social influence. Traits such as charisma, decisiveness, and social adaptability were likely reinforced through both genetics and social conditioning. Elite families historically emphasized etiquette, diplomacy, and public perception, creating a lineage capable of exerting influence across diverse cultures and political systems. Mechanisms of trait preservation. Selective marriage practices. Historical dynasties practiced consanguineous or strategic intermarriage to consolidate desired genetic traits. Modern elites continue to form alliances through marriage or partnership networks, preserving both genetic and socio-political advantages. Elite education and mentorship. Education systems for elites, both historical and contemporary, transmit specialized knowledge alongside cultural and strategic norms. Mentorship ensures that individuals inherit not only skills and knowledge but also social and leadership strategies optimized for influence. Ritualized training and initiation. Secret societies, ceremonial practices, and initiation programs historically reinforced lineage identity, loyalty, and cognitive skill development. Modern equivalents include elite boarding schools, think tanks, and specialized professional networks that replicate ancestral mechanisms for influence. Integration into modern leadership networks. Political influence. Descendants of elite bloodlines often occupy strategic political positions, heads of state, legislators, advisors, and policy influencers. Their effectiveness is reinforced by inheritance of social networks, cultural knowledge, and negotiation strategies, reflecting ancient elite practices. Financial and corporate networks. Banking dynasties, industrial families, and global investors maintain centralized control over resources and wealth, analogous to historical control of trade and taxation. Access to capital and strategic planning allows these families to influence markets, industries, and technological advancement worldwide. Cultural and media influence. Control over media, publishing, and cultural institutions allows elite families to shape societal narratives, maintain social hierarchies, and influence public perception. Symbols, messaging, and cultural storytelling continue to reinforce historical patterns of lineage authority, subtly integrating ancestral knowledge. Examples of ancestral continuity in modern times. European royalty and aristocracy. Families such as the Habsburgs, Windsors, and Romanovs maintain intergenerational influence through strategic alliances and selective marriage, reflecting ancient bloodline continuity. These families often serve as cultural and political anchors, maintaining historical symbols of authority and societal cohesion. Industrial and financial dynasties. Families like the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and Morgans demonstrate wealth preservation, intergenerational strategy, and influence over global finance, reflecting centuries-long patterns of elite management. Their integration into contemporary governance, philanthropy, and international affairs mirrors the ancient model of elite guidance and social engineering. Scientific and academic leadership. Descendants of elite families frequently occupy positions in research, higher education, and technological innovation. This maintains control over knowledge production, intellectual networks, and societal direction, analogous to priestly and elite schools in ancient civilizations. Modern institutions as extensions of bloodline strategy. Elite educational institutions. Universities, academies, and private schools act as modern analogues to ancient initiation schools, transmitting knowledge, values, and social networks to new generations. Selective admission ensures that lineage members and allies maintain strategic influence, preserving elite traits. Financial systems and think tanks. Central banks, investment firms, and global economic institutions function as nodes for elite coordination and influence, similar to ancient control over resources and trade. Think tanks and policy advisory groups serve as mechanisms for strategic planning and elite collaboration, mirroring historical councils of rulers and priests. Media and cultural organizations. Control over mass communication enables elite families to shape public perception, cultural priorities, and historical narratives. This reflects ancient strategies of preserving authority through symbolism, narrative, and ritual. The role of hidden networks. Covert coordination across borders. Bloodline elites operate in overlapping networks of influence that transcend national boundaries. These networks maintain strategic coordination, shared knowledge, and mutual reinforcement, ensuring that lineage influence persists even in globalized contexts. Philanthropy and social engineering. Elite-led initiatives in education, healthcare, and research often guide societal development in ways aligned with bloodline objectives. Philanthropy functions as both a cultural tool and mechanism for influence, preserving both reputation and legacy. Integration of technology and knowledge. Modern elites leverage technological advancement to consolidate influence, maintain data control, communication networks, and innovation leadership. This reflects a continuation of ancient strategies where knowledge and technological superiority were preserved within bloodline networks. Ancestral knowledge and strategic advantage. Historical continuity of knowledge. Elite families maintain archives, rituals, and traditions that encode long-term strategic knowledge, including economic principles, governance models, and social dynamics. The integration of historical awareness with modern expertise gives lineage members a unique advantage in leadership and influence. Cultural significance and symbolism. Rituals, symbols, and institutional legacy create identity reinforcement and societal legitimacy. Ancestral knowledge is embedded in ceremonial practices, organizational structure, and cultural narratives, preserving the bloodline's strategic presence. Decision-making and societal shaping. By combining historical insight, genetic advantage, and social networks, elite lineages influence policy, cultural development, and global strategy, replicating ancient models of societal guidance. Leadership decisions informed by lineage continuity have long-term implications for social, economic, and political stability. Advanced knowledge, technology, and modern innovation. Advanced knowledge in ancient civilizations. Mesopotamian scientific achievements. Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian civilizations exhibited early mastery of astronomy, mathematics, and engineering. Records of celestial movements, precise calendars, and architectural blueprints suggest knowledge reserved for elites and priesthoods, potentially aligned with Anunnaki guidance. Innovations such as irrigation systems, city planning, and metallurgy were controlled by ruling families, preserving knowledge within the bloodline. Egyptian contributions. Egyptian elites developed advanced construction, medicine, and astronomical systems, often linked to sacred temples and ritual practices. Pyramids, obelisks, and monumental architecture demonstrate engineering knowledge far beyond the general population, indicating selective preservation within ruling lineages. Elite families and priests functioned as custodians of both practical and esoteric knowledge, ensuring continuity across generations. Mesoamerican scientific systems. Mayan and Aztec civilizations produced precise astronomical observations, complex calendars, and architectural achievements. Knowledge was concentrated in priestly classes and ruling dynasties, suggesting selective transmission of advanced information. These civilizations maintained intellectual continuity through codices, stelae, and ritualized education, echoing ancestral strategies for knowledge preservation. The bloodline and knowledge transmission. Family-based knowledge networks. Dynastic families historically controlled access to knowledge, whether practical, technological, or spiritual. Knowledge transfer occurred through oral instruction, apprenticeship, and written records, with access restricted to lineage members or trusted allies. This ensured both genetic and intellectual continuity, reinforcing elite control over society. Temple and esoteric schools. Temples, mystery schools, and initiatory institutions functioned as repositories for advanced knowledge. Priests and lineage heirs were trained in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and governance, ensuring that strategic intelligence and technological understanding remained within the elite network. Symbolic encoding. Information was often encoded in art, architecture, and religious texts, allowing elites to safeguard knowledge while guiding societal development. Symbols, ritual practice, and sacred geometry served as instructional tools and reminders of lineage continuity, connecting contemporary elites to ancient wisdom. Medieval and Renaissance knowledge preservation. Alchemy, astronomy, and mathematics. Medieval European elites preserved knowledge of alchemy, astronomy, and numerology, often passed through secret societies and scholarly guilds. Families with elite ancestry integrated this knowledge into political, scientific, and cultural spheres, ensuring continued societal influence. Texts and treatises encoded scientific principles in symbolic language, maintaining ancestral knowledge while avoiding widespread dissemination. Renaissance innovation. Families like the Medicis and other elite patrons sponsored art, architecture, and scientific research, functioning as custodians of advanced knowledge. Renaissance advancements in engineering, anatomy, and astronomy were closely tied to elite education and access, reflecting continuity from ancient bloodline practices. Esoteric societies. Rosicrucians, Freemasons, and other secretive orders preserved both spiritual and scientific knowledge, often accessible only to members with verified elite ancestry. Rituals, initiations, and symbolic texts ensured that technological, mathematical, and astronomical understanding remained within the controlled network. Modern innovation and bloodline influence. Industrial and technological advancements. Elite families historically influenced industrial development, infrastructure, and technological research. Ownership of patents, control of capital, and sponsorship of inventors allowed lineage networks to guide societal change and innovation, maintaining influence across generations. Scientific research and academia. Bloodline networks continue to fund and direct universities, laboratories, and research institutions, influencing both the direction and application of scientific discovery. Historical emphasis on education and apprenticeship persists, ensuring that elite influence aligns with technological progress. Modern secret networks. Contemporary equivalents of ancient esoteric schools exist in research institutes, think tanks, and elite organizations, where knowledge is concentrated and selectively shared. This maintains strategic advantage, similar to ancient mechanisms where elites controlled both practical and esoteric knowledge. Evidence of Anunnaki influence on modern technology. Aerospace and engineering innovations. Some researchers suggest that breakthroughs in aerospace, energy, and communication technologies may reflect continuity of ancestral knowledge frameworks. Elite families historically invested in exploratory and technological endeavors, allowing innovations to emerge within controlled networks. Genetic and biotechnological research. Bloodline elites with access to scientific resources may influence the direction of genetic research, medicine, and biotechnology, paralleling ancestral practices of selective enhancement and trait preservation. Contemporary efforts in genomics and biotechnology could be interpreted as a continuation of ancient lineage strategies for optimizing genetic and intellectual traits. Computing and information systems. Modern computational infrastructure reflects a structured, hierarchical approach to knowledge management. Elite control over these systems allows strategic access, oversight, and influence, maintaining continuity with ancient practices of knowledge preservation and selective transmission. Global networks of technological influence. Corporations and research institutes. Elite families often hold controlling interests in corporations that lead global innovation in technology, pharmaceuticals, and infrastructure. These entities function as modern repositories of knowledge, mirroring ancient temple-based and scholarly knowledge networks. Scientific collaboration and influence. Bloodline elites facilitate collaboration between researchers, institutions, and governments, ensuring that knowledge dissemination aligns with lineage interests. Strategic partnerships allow elites to maintain both intellectual and social dominance, shaping global technological evolution. Media and knowledge narratives. Control over media and information dissemination enables elites to direct public perception of technology, science, and innovation, reinforcing their authority. This ensures that technological and cultural advancements remain aligned with strategic, long-term lineage goals. The role of ancestral knowledge in society. Strategic planning and leadership. Knowledge preserved within elite bloodlines informs decision-making, policy formation, and global governance. Historical continuity ensures that strategic insights, risk management, and societal control are transmitted alongside genetic and educational advantages. Education and skill transmission. Modern educational systems, mentorship programs, and elite academies replicate ancient initiation systems. By selectively training lineage members, elites ensure continuity of expertise, leadership, and innovation capacity, maintaining societal influence. Innovation as a tool of influence. Technological breakthroughs often consolidate power within elite networks, allowing bloodline families to shape economic, cultural, and political landscapes. Strategic application of knowledge ensures that lineage continuity aligns with broader societal evolution. Cultural and scientific legacy. Integration of history and innovation. Bloodline elites leverage knowledge of historical patterns to anticipate societal needs and technological opportunities. This integration of ancient wisdom with modern innovation enables continuity of influence across time and cultures. Preservation of intellectual heritage. Libraries, archives, and educational institutions serve as repositories for ancestral knowledge, ensuring that lineage members retain access to foundational understanding. Symbolism, ritual, and institutional structures maintain the continuity of intellectual and technological advantage. Long-term societal strategy. By controlling knowledge, technology, and education, bloodline elites continue to shape global trajectories, reinforcing societal structures consistent with ancestral models of governance and influence. Geopolitics, economics, and global networks of influence. Elite influence on geopolitics. Historical precedent. From Mesopotamia to Europe, elite lineages have historically guided geopolitical decisions through dynastic marriages, alliances, and strategic governance. The Anunnaki bloodline, through control of priesthoods, councils, and royal succession, shaped policies affecting empires, trade routes, and military expansion. Modern parallels are visible in strategic positioning of elites in government, international organizations, and diplomacy, continuing ancestral patterns of influence. Colonial expansion and global strategy. Elite families historically financed and directed exploration and colonization, controlling resources, trade routes, and emerging political entities. Colonization was not only economic but also cultural and strategic, ensuring long-term influence over societies and resource distribution. Bloodline elites used these networks to maintain geopolitical dominance far from ancestral homelands, ensuring continuity of influence. 20th century geopolitics. World wars, the Cold War, and decolonization illustrate the persistence of elite networks guiding strategic decisions. Hidden families and alliances often influence financial flows, political appointments, and international agreements, reflecting continuity of ancestral strategic patterns. Diplomatic networks, military planning, and economic oversight maintained control consistent with bloodline objectives of societal influence and stability. Economic influence and global wealth. Control of banking and finance. Historical bloodline elites maintained control over money lending, trade, and taxation. Modern financial institutions, central banks, multinational banks, and investment firms are often directly influenced or managed by lineage-aligned families, ensuring the continuity of wealth and societal leverage. Industrial networks. Industrialization allowed elites to expand influence through ownership of production, patents, and infrastructure. Strategic control over energy, transportation, and technology sectors enabled elite families to guide societal development, preserving both financial and social dominance. Global trade and resource management. Elite networks historically managed resources including agriculture, minerals, and strategic commodities. Modern global trade systems reflect these ancestral practices, with lineage-connected families maintaining influence over supply chains, corporate conglomerates, and international markets. Political and institutional networks. Dynastic politics and advisory roles. Political families with ancestral elite lineage often occupy strategic roles in government, heads of state, ministers, and advisors. These positions allow elites to shape laws, policies, and international relations, reinforcing both societal control and lineage influence. International organizations. Control over organizations such as the United Nations, IMF, and World Bank provides elite families with a platform to influence global policy. Decision-making within these institutions often reflects long-term planning aligned with historical strategies of elite governance. Think tanks and policy institutes. Think tanks function as modern equivalents of ancient councils, preserving strategic knowledge, forecasting societal trends, and guiding policy decisions. Membership and influence within these institutions frequently correlate with elite family networks, ensuring the transmission of historical strategic frameworks. Societal influence and cultural control. Media and communication. Control over media outlets, publishing, and communication platforms allows bloodline elites to shape public narratives, historical interpretation, and cultural values. Historical parallels include control of temple inscriptions, public monuments, and religious doctrine, demonstrating continuity in societal influence strategies. Education and knowledge gatekeeping. Elite families maintain influence over education, from private institutions to universities and research institutes. By controlling curriculum, scholarship, and academic research, these networks ensure the alignment of knowledge with bloodline objectives, perpetuating societal influence. Cultural symbolism and legitimacy. Festivals, rituals, and symbolic architecture reinforce lineage legitimacy and public perception of authority. Modern parallels include ceremonial events, philanthropic foundations, and cultural patronage, which subtly integrate elite influence into societal consciousness. Integration of modern networks. Transnational collaboration. Bloodline families coordinate across borders to maintain influence in finance, policy, technology, and culture. Global coordination ensures that lineage-aligned strategies are implemented across political and economic systems, creating resilience and adaptability similar to ancient network structures. Elite education and interconnectedness. Shared educational institutions and professional networks create intergenerational, global collaboration. Elite members benefit from mutual reinforcement, knowledge transfer, and strategic alignment, reflecting the integration of ancestral knowledge into contemporary leadership. Technology and innovation networks. Control of emerging technologies, patents, and innovation hubs allows bloodline elites to anticipate societal change and influence the direction of technological development. By strategically guiding research and application, these networks ensure continuity of influence aligned with historical objectives. Case studies of influence. European banking dynasties. Families historically involved in finance, such as Rothschilds and others, demonstrate centuries-long continuity of economic control, strategic investment, and global influence. These networks influence both national and international economic policy, paralleling ancient control of trade, taxation, and resources. Industrial and technological elites. Families controlling major industrial conglomerates and tech enterprises guide innovation, production, and societal infrastructure. Their influence ensures that economic and technological development aligns with lineage objectives, preserving both wealth and strategic advantage. Political advisory networks. Elite-linked think tanks, diplomatic councils, and advisory boards coordinate global policy, often shaping decisions behind the scenes. These networks reflect the continuity of ancient Anunnaki-aligned strategic planning and governance. Mechanisms of influence preservation. Selective knowledge transmission. Advanced knowledge, scientific research, and strategic insights are transmitted selectively within elite networks. This preserves both intellectual advantage and societal leverage, ensuring that lineage influence persists over generations. Marriage and alliance strategies. Strategic alliances, often through marriage or partnership, consolidate resources, knowledge, and influence across families and nations. This practice echoes historical lineage preservation strategies, reinforcing continuity in both genetic and social terms. Institutional integration. By placing lineage members in positions of influence within corporations, governments, and educational institutions, elite families maintain systemic control. Institutions act as both platforms for societal guidance and repositories of strategic knowledge, reflecting a seamless continuation from ancient dynastic strategies. Implications for understanding modern society. Hidden networks of power. Recognition of bloodline influence reveals layers of governance, finance, and societal control not immediately visible in public discourse. Historical patterns of elite continuity inform current global decision-making and institutional alignment. Interconnected global influence. The transnational nature of elite networks ensures that strategic influence transcends national boundaries, cultural contexts, and political regimes. This interconnectedness reflects a deliberate, long-term strategy of maintaining lineage dominance and societal stability. Societal resilience and adaptability. Elite networks adapt to crises, economic collapse, war, or social upheaval through strategic coordination, resource allocation, and knowledge application. This mirrors ancient practices where hidden lineages maintained influence across centuries despite political or social disruption. Emerging technologies, global institutions, and future trends. Influence on emerging technologies. Artificial intelligence and computational systems. AI represents one of the most significant emerging technologies of the 21st century. Bloodline elites, through investment in AI research, data infrastructure, and corporate partnerships, guide the development and deployment of these systems. Control over AI allows elites to influence decision-making, societal trends, and access to information, replicating ancient strategies of knowledge concentration and selective influence. Biotechnology and genetic engineering. Access to advanced biotechnology and genetic research enables the manipulation of traits related to health, intelligence, and physical capability. Lineage-aligned families may influence these fields through funding, research direction, and institutional oversight, maintaining continuity of genetic enhancement and trait preservation. Historical parallels exist in selective breeding and genetic control in ancient dynasties, suggesting a long-term strategy of trait optimization. Energy and environmental technologies. Elite networks direct research in renewable energy, climate engineering, and resource management. By controlling critical knowledge in these fields, bloodline families shape global infrastructure, resource allocation, and technological dependency, ensuring influence over both society and the environment. Space exploration and satellite networks. Investment in aerospace programs, satellites, and interplanetary research positions lineage-aligned elites to control advanced scientific knowledge, communications infrastructure, and potential extraterrestrial resources. Historically, celestial knowledge was a marker of elite authority. Modern space exploration continues this tradition of strategic technological advantage. Global institutions and elite influence. International financial systems. Elite families continue to influence global finance through ownership stakes, advisory roles, and policy guidance in central banks, investment firms, and international organizations. These structures allow long-term planning, risk management, and economic coordination, reflecting strategies rooted in ancient elite control of trade, taxation, and resources. United Nations and multilateral governance. Influence within the UN and other multilateral institutions ensures that global policy aligns with elite interests. Strategic appointments, think tanks, and diplomatic networks allow lineage-aligned individuals to shape international law, conflict resolution, and global priorities. Scientific and academic oversight. Elite families fund universities, research centers, and foundations, influencing research agendas, intellectual property, and scientific innovation. Control over academic networks ensures that the direction of technological progress and societal knowledge remains aligned with lineage objectives. Cultural and media institutions. Ownership and influence over global media, publishing, and entertainment platforms allow bloodline elites to shape cultural narratives and societal perceptions. This reinforces historical methods of elite control over ideology, knowledge dissemination, and public behavior. Shaping societal trends. Education and workforce development. Elite influence ensures that education systems cultivate skills, innovation, and loyalty aligned with strategic objectives. Scholarships, private academies, and professional networks enable the selective development of human capital, mirroring historical apprenticeship and mentorship structures. Technological adoption and standardization. By controlling technology deployment and adoption, elites influence societal priorities, economic structures, and global interconnectivity. Global institutions and elite influence. International financial systems. Elite families continue to influence global finance through ownership stakes, advisory roles, and policy guidance in central banks, investment firms, and international organizations. These structures allow long-term planning, risk management, and economic coordination, reflecting strategies rooted in ancient elite control of trade, taxation, and resources. United Nations and multilateral governance. Influence within the UN and other multilateral institutions ensures that global policy aligns with elite interests. Strategic appointments, think tanks, and diplomatic networks allow lineage-aligned individuals to shape international law, conflict resolution, and global priorities. Scientific and academic oversight. Elite families fund universities, research centers, and foundations, influencing research agendas, intellectual property, and scientific innovation. Control over academic networks ensures that the direction of technological progress and societal knowledge remains aligned with lineage objectives. Cultural and media institutions. Ownership and influence over global media, publishing, and entertainment platforms allow bloodline elites to shape cultural narratives and societal perceptions. This reinforces historical methods of elite control over ideology, knowledge dissemination, and public behavior. Shaping societal trends. Education and workforce development. Elite influence ensures that education systems cultivate skills, innovation, and loyalty aligned with strategic objectives. Scholarships, private academies, and professional networks enable the selective development of human capital, mirroring historical apprenticeship and mentorship structures. Technological adoption and standardization. By controlling technology deployment and adoption, elites influence societal priorities, economic structures, and global interconnectivity. This approach ensures strategic advantage and societal cohesion, consistent with ancestral models of centralized knowledge control. Cultural and social engineering. Cultural initiatives, media messaging, and philanthropic programs subtly guide societal values, norms, and behaviors. Historical parallels include temple rituals, festivals, and symbolic communication used by ancient elites to maintain authority and social order. Strategic planning for future influence. Long-term societal modeling. Bloodline elites engage in forecasting and modeling to anticipate technological, economic, and societal trends. Tools include AI simulations, global economic analysis, and policy advisory networks, reflecting ancestral practices of predictive governance. Resource and infrastructure control. Strategic ownership of energy, water, and communication infrastructure ensures that elite families retain influence over critical systems in the event of societal or environmental disruption. This mirrors ancient control over trade routes, granaries, and water systems, which secured long-term authority and survival. Genetic and cognitive preservation. Investment in genomics, neurotechnology, and cognitive enhancement reflects a continuation of ancient practices to preserve and enhance elite traits. These efforts ensure that bloodline members retain physical, cognitive, and leadership advantages, reinforcing continuity across generations. Case studies of modern influence. Technological conglomerates. Companies in AI, biotechnology, and aerospace demonstrate elite-directed innovation, often through funding, partnerships, and executive placement. Influence over these organizations ensures alignment with lineage objectives, including societal control and technological leadership. Global financial networks. Multinational banks and investment firms controlled by lineage-linked families maintain strategic influence over markets, resources, and international policy. Historical patterns of trade and wealth control persist in modern finance, providing continuity of elite authority. Policy think tanks and international councils. Advisory networks allow elites to guide global governance, economic policy, and scientific research, shaping societal trends from behind the scenes. These institutions replicate ancient councils of rulers and priests, ensuring lineage influence in decision-making across generations. Future societal trends and bloodline influence. Integration of technology and governance. Emerging technologies, including AI, blockchain, and autonomous systems, provide new avenues for elite oversight and societal management. Lineage-aligned families leverage these technologies to anticipate change, enforce policy, and maintain strategic advantage. Globalization and network coordination. Elite networks coordinate across nations, industries, and cultural institutions, ensuring resilient global influence. Transnational alliances replicate ancient patterns of intermarriage, trade partnerships, and political alliances, securing lineage continuity in a connected world. Preservation of knowledge and influence. Digital archives, scientific databases, and intellectual property management allow elites to consolidate knowledge and maintain control over innovation. By centralizing access to critical information, bloodline families preserve both strategic advantage and societal guidance capability. Ethical and strategic considerations. Elite influence in emerging technology raises questions about ethics, social equity, and the concentration of power. Understanding bloodline strategies helps contextualize these debates, revealing long-term patterns of societal shaping and governance. Synthesis, implications, and future trajectories. Synthesis of historical influence. Ancient foundations. The Anunnaki bloodline established a framework of genetic continuity, elite knowledge, and leadership strategy in early civilizations. From Mesopotamia to Egypt, dynasties and priesthoods controlled access to technology, astronomy, mathematics, and governance, shaping human development. These early strategies of control, marriage alliances, selective education, and societal influence created a blueprint for long-term continuity. Medieval and Renaissance adaptation. Following the fall of ancient empires, the bloodline adapted by integrating into European royalty, religious hierarchies, and secretive scholarly societies. Knowledge preservation, wealth accumulation, and social influence remain central, ensuring that elite families retain strategic control despite political upheaval. Industrial and modern consolidation. The Industrial Revolution, technological innovation, and globalization allowed elite families to expand their influence across new domains. Control over finance, industrial networks, education, and media reinforced both societal influence and the continuity of lineage authority. Hidden networks ensured that knowledge, wealth, and leadership traits were passed down, maintaining continuity from ancient dynasties. Modern evidence of bloodline influence. Genetic continuity. Selective marriage, elite education, and mentorship have preserved traits associated with cognitive skill, leadership ability, and social influence. Modern elites frequently exhibit characteristics consistent with historical patterns of strategic thinking, adaptability, and decision-making capacity, reflecting centuries of lineage preservation. Control of knowledge and technology. From research institutions to technological corporations, bloodline networks guide scientific progress, innovation, and societal adoption. Access to critical knowledge ensures that elites maintain strategic advantage and influence over both policy and societal trends, mirroring ancient custodial practices. Global institutions and economic influence. Modern finance, international governance, and transnational alliances continue to reflect elite coordination and strategic planning. Hidden networks allow bloodline-aligned families to shape global economic systems, political decisions, and societal norms while remaining largely invisible to the public. Implications for society. Power and governance. Understanding the continuity of the Anunnaki bloodline provides insight into how hidden influence shapes policy, global strategy, and societal structures. Elite families guide governance indirectly through institutions, networks, and strategic investments, maintaining long-term stability and continuity consistent with historical patterns. Technology and knowledge control. Control of emerging technologies, data systems, and innovation hubs allows elites to determine the trajectory of scientific progress and societal adoption. This ensures that societal evolution remains aligned with lineage objectives, including resource management, strategic influence, and preservation of power. Cultural influence and public perception. Media, education, and cultural initiatives subtly shape public perception, social norms, and historical narratives. Historical analogues, temple rituals, symbolic architecture, and controlled knowledge dissemination reflect a continuity of methods for social influence. Potential future trajectories. Technological integration and influence. AI, biotechnology, space exploration, and global communications offer new opportunities for lineage influence. Elite control over these domains may redefine societal hierarchies, economic structures, and global governance, continuing ancient practices of strategic dominance. Genetic and cognitive optimization. Advances in genomics, neurotechnology, and cognitive enhancement could allow bloodline members to further preserve and enhance traits critical to leadership, decision-making, and societal influence. This continuation of selective trait preservation echoes ancestral strategies of lineage optimization. Global coordination and resilience. Hidden networks may increasingly coordinate responses to global crises, economic collapse, pandemics, climate change, ensuring that strategic influence persists across unpredictable events. Such coordination mirrors ancient practices of elite adaptability during periods of upheaval. Ethical and societal considerations. As lineage influence intersects with modern technology and governance, questions of equity, transparency, and societal fairness arise. Awareness of historical patterns allows for a deeper understanding of power dynamics and long-term societal trajectories. Lessons from historical continuity. Adaptation and resilience. The Anunnaki bloodline demonstrates the importance of adaptation to political, social, and technological change. Continuity is achieved not only through heredity but also through strategic planning, knowledge preservation, and societal integration. Technological stewardship. Elite control over emerging technologies may determine economic dominance, scientific advancement, and military capabilities. This mirrors ancient practices where access to advanced knowledge ensured both survival and dominance. Global stability and conflict mitigation. Coordinated elite networks may act to stabilize societies during crises, deploying resources and influence to prevent systemic collapse. This reflects the historical role of lineage-aligned elites in managing empire transitions, revolutions, and societal upheaval. Cultural and ideological continuity. Through media, education, and cultural patronage, elites shape ideology, values, and historical narratives, ensuring lineage-aligned cultural continuity. Ancient strategies of symbolic communication, ritual, and controlled knowledge continue in modern forms of societal guidance. Final conclusion. The Anunnaki bloodline, spanning from ancient Mesopotamia to contemporary global elites, demonstrates a remarkable continuity of influence, strategy, and adaptation. Across 22,000 years of history, this lineage has preserved genetic, cognitive, and leadership traits critical for societal influence, maintained control over knowledge, technology, and cultural narratives through secretive networks, education, and institutional power, guided human development through dynastic strategy, economic control, political coordination, and innovation stewardship, adapted to historical upheavals, ensuring continuity of authority and strategic influence across generations and civilizations. Today, the bloodline's influence extends into emerging technologies, global institutions, and cultural systems, reflecting ancient patterns of elite guidance and societal management. Understanding this lineage provides critical insight into the hidden structures that shape our world, influence decision-making, and guide societal evolution, offering a unique perspective on the continuity of human civilization and the forces that shape it. The story of the Anunnaki bloodline is more than a historical narrative, it is a lens through which to understand the interconnectedness of power, knowledge, and human development. While invisible to most, the influence of this lineage is present in institutions, technology, culture, and global strategy. By studying this continuity, we gain insight into the mechanisms of influence that span centuries, and perhaps, the enduring legacy of ancient knowledge in shaping humanity's future.